Welcome back. Okay, so for today's quick tip, we're going to talk very briefly and super generally about nutrition. Today's tip might do more to cause you to ask questions than to give you answers. That's not always a bad, sometimes that's more beneficial than just spoon feeding you. My mode of teaching really is not geared towards spoon feeding anyway. So we're going to talk real quickly about nutrition. Probably, I don't think you can have a month like January in the fitness business without touching on nutrition. So we're gonna just overview some simple, quick things. Part of the reason I want to do this is because over the course of my career, and even before I was working as a trainer or a coach, I've seen a lot of different fads. I grew up kind of during the, I grew up during the 80s and the 90s, so I was like in the midst of the low-fat scare, and like when I was a kid, I thought I shouldn't eat any butter because it was fat, and fat was going to kill you, blah, blah. And then I knew a lot of people who read the Zone book by Barry Sears, Dr. Barry Sears, when that was the current fad. Most of you watching this probably don't know what that is unless you're my age, but that was a real popular thing for a while, and it was... One of the things about the Zone that was significant was it was one of the first times that a doctor, a medical person, kind of got out there and said that dietary fat was not bad for people, and dietary fat was not what was making people fat, and that caused a little media storm at the time. So Dr. Atkins obviously did that, but Dr. Atkins mostly just got criticized. I think Barry Sears, his approach was a lot more moderate, so not quite the same. But, and then of course, I did the low carb thing before the low carb thing was trendy because of reading Mario de Pasquale's work with the anabolic diet. So a lot of us were doing that before people were even talking about keto. Then there's been the paleo thing, and there's been so many different things. What I want you to understand is, especially if you're, I know this is online, so people can be watching it anywhere, but if you're living in a free country, although we might be kind of redefining what that means with some of the recent stuff, typically you probably have access to like a wider range of food than people have had historically. So, and if we look at even like 50 years ago in America, when people wanted to eat, they had to be a lot more deliberate about what they ate than they do now. Whereas like now, if it's 11 o'clock at night and I decide that I'm hungry and I don't have anything at home for some reason, I can go find food that's like hot and fresh. Not necessarily healthy, but like it's, recently made. So in modern life, we don't have... It's easy to take nutrition for granted. Let me put it that way. There's a lot of things you can, microwave and whatever that some of us in the health professions don't consider to be actual food. There's something you can put in your mouth and you can eat, and it provides energy, but not necessarily quality nutrition. So just kind of touching on some things real quick to help you out. Actually, let me rephrase that. What I want to say is we live in a time and a place where we have the luxury of figuring out optimal nutrition for ourselves. Okay? And that is historically really significant and bizarre. So we should, as much as you can, you should take advantage of that. And I know that it's confusing because there's a lot of people out there that say a lot of different things. So I'm going to try to dial some of this in real quick. This obviously, this is just a quick tip. So this is not intended to, again, answer a lot of questions. It might give you more questions than anything if you're confused by nutrition. But hopefully it'll give you some direction and give you a better idea of what kind of questions you should be asking. So one thing you should understand, so we're going to talk about protein, carbs, and fat, and I'm going to wrap this up. Humans do not store protein. Okay, so we have the ability to store carbohydrates. We have the ability to store dietary fats. We don't store protein. So if you eat more than you need, your body's just going to cycle it through. I've read some things that suggest that if people chronically overeat protein, that can put more wear and tear on like the kidneys and the liver. But in 20 years of what I've, working with clients, I've seen almost no one who ate too much protein. Okay. Now, you will hear people say sometimes that like high protein diets are bad for your kidneys. That is a misuse of a study. Okay, so there's been studies that have indicated, it's important to understand that studies don't prove anything. Okay, again, I'll talk about that another time, but studies have indicated that people who have kidney problems don't do good on high protein diets. That's not the same thing as high protein diets are bad for your kidneys. So if someone's kidneys are not functioning properly and they're having some kind of renal failure and they're like under medical care for that, they probably need to talk to their doctor exactly about how they should eat. For the rest of us who hopefully have healthy kidneys, eating a higher protein diet doesn't, so medically and scientifically that doesn't appear to have any problems. Understand that the RDA for protein and everything else, that's not a suggestion to help you thrive, okay, or to be like super athletic or anything. That's basically to prevent death. So the RDAs should not be seen, those are a baseline. Those shouldn't be seen as like an optimal ratio of anything. That's one reason why if you're looking at like a good quality multivitamin, a client asked me about this just on a call this week. If you're looking at a good multivitamin, sometimes when it shows like the percentage of things, you might see a really high percentage, like 500%. That's because what the RDA might be to keep you alive might be a lot different than what you need to feel really good and thrive. So keep that in mind. You can check that out if you want to on your own. But so when we get in enough protein, it does a lot of different things, but just a couple key things to keep this short. Your protein supports your lean mass, okay? And the more lean mass you have, the faster your metabolism is going to be. So if you are trying to lose fat, your lean mass is critical. One of the things that trips a lot of people up when they get on some of these fad diets is if you start something and you're only looking at your scale weight, you don't know if you're losing or gaining fat or muscle. You just know you're losing weight. That is not a good metric. You really need to either get some kind of caliper measurements or at the very least, get like a cloth tape measure and do tape measurements so you can kind of see a little better idea of what's changing. I know a lot of people have those biometric scales. I'm not crazy about those, but it is probably better than just using scale weight. Just understand that if you're using one of those impedance things, they're very much affected by your hydration. And I've literally seen someone get on one of those and get measurements as far as their weight and their mass and get off and step right back on and get different data. So I'm sure there's kind of a range of ones that are whatever, but I like caliper measurements personally. On my website I talk about different options for getting your body fat measured, but bottom line, getting in your protein supports your lean mass. So if your lean mass, like the better you're building muscle or keeping the muscle you have, the faster your metabolism is going to be. If you go on a low calorie kind of feeding plan and you're not, especially if you're not weight training, your body has a really good chance that it's going to want to lose muscle before it loses fat. This is one of the big reasons why someone will go do some kind of fad thing. And here's a free tip. A lot of things that are fad things claim not to be fad things, okay? They'll tell you, like, this is not a fad, and it's a fad. So, maybe we'll do a video on identifying fad diets if people need it, I don't know. Anyway, getting enough protein, it'll help support your lean mass. Another thing that a lot of people don't realize is your protein intake has a relationship with your immune function, which these days people should be interested in what keeps their immune system healthy, okay? You should always be interested in that, actually, but these days that seems to be kind of a dominant thing that should be getting attention that people aren't talking about. But the first 20 to 30 grams of protein you get during the day go to support your immune system, not your lean mass. So if you're skipping breakfast and only eating like lunch and dinner, you're probably not getting enough protein to thrive, okay, to be healthy. Again, like when I'm looking at nutrition, I encourage people to try and figure out what is optimal for them, not what's like basic to keep you from dying. What's optimal. We want to thrive. We want to be vibrant. We don't want to just be, if you're watching this, you're probably not a person whose goal is to like become one with their couch. If that is your goal, I'm not the most entertaining channel for that. So anyway, protein does a lot of different things. And in general, you can, if you read some books or get online, you'll find a lot of different opinions about this. I think for most people, trying to get in like 1 gram of protein per like kind of either lean mass or kind of what they want to weigh is good. If you weigh 250 pounds and you want to weigh 150 pounds, that means I would kind of go towards like the 150 grams of protein a day. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about protein. Carbs. So I did the low carb thing for a long time. I'm not as fond of it as I once was. I think it can be useful to help somebody lean up. But the reality is that carbs are the source of energy that the body prefers. Now, there's a lot of ways we could go with this. And people can argue about, paleo things and whatever. I have a lot of disagreements with the paleo thing. My joke about that is I have a toilet in my bathroom. That's not paleo, and I'm not going to get rid of it because it's not paleo. I also have running water and soap. I'm keeping these things. I have a beard comb. My beard comb is not paleo. It is essential for this. So those are all jokes, but maybe sometime I'll talk more seriously about the paleo thing. My bottom line is I'm not convinced that we really know that much. No, I'm sorry. The bottom line is I think ancient people ate what they could find. Okay, so trying to structure how we eat today based off what we think people did a long time ago, I think there's a disconnect there. But I'll get into that more another time. But right now, carbs are the body's preferred source of energy. It is true that the body can use fat as a fuel source. There's a couple things there. One is the body's not very efficient at that. I don't remember the exact number. I should look that up before I made this video, but it's not efficient at it. That means that you have to eat a lot of fat to make the body really get into what people think of as keto. Most people that think they're doing keto, they're not doing keto. They're just not eating very many carbs. And the danger there is if you're not eating very many carbohydrates, and you think you're doing keto, but you're not getting enough dietary fat to where the body recognizes fat as a fuel source, the body's going to see protein as a fuel source. And if the body sees protein as a fuel source, you're more likely to get catabolic, meaning breaking your muscle down, meaning slowing your metabolism down. So, I'm speaking in general terms, but that's the concern with that. So, I would say that between protein, carbs, and dietary fat, I think that carbs probably need the most attention from people as far as like, that might be the thing you need to nail down as far as like how much you need on a daily basis. Now, if you are just eating like a regular person and you're not paying any attention to your nutrition at all, you don't need to try to get real specific at first. You need to start with kind of broad terms. And as you figure out some systems for yourself, you can narrow things down. That is best done, I think, under a coach. So, you can find somebody who is good with nutrition to help you kind of nail that down, or you can continue to do research on your own if you prefer. But I think carbs are something that require a little more attention than, from a body composition standpoint, than protein and fat do. So, but the other thing about if people want to do like a low carb thing and try to use fat for energy, this shocked me when I came across it, but because it's counterintuitive. So one of the reasons people talk about that, including me, is because dietary carbs can have a negative impact on insulin. Okay, and if people overproduce insulin, it can make it extremely difficult to lose body fat. And you can gain weight without eating if you're making too much insulin. So, and that's not just my opinion. That's definitely not just my opinion. That's a medical fact. It's something people don't talk about that much. But if you're overproducing insulin, it can cause problems. So, so this is kind of weird. But the type of fat, it's, if you understand that, it's not that weird. But if you just hear, if I just make the statement that fat can harm insulin sensitivity, that's weird, right? Like when I first read that, I was like, what? But the reality is the type of fat we eat has a, I was going to say an impact. It's more than an impact. The type of fat we eat has a direct effect on the quality of our cells, okay? So if someone is eating like really good quality fats and they're paying a lot of attention to their nutrition, the cells will be very pliable. And what that means is the cells have an easier time accepting energy and releasing energy, okay? So some people have a very hard time losing fat, and one of the problems is their cells just won't release energy. It won't let it out, it locks up. Some researchers say that it's weird, the way they explain it is that the body almost goes into like a sense of anarchy, where when it should be releasing energy from the fat cells, it won't do it. And I think one of the things that happens here is if we consume too much saturated fat too much of the time, it can make the cells very rigid. Okay? So we want our cells to be pliable. They're pliable, they accept nutrients easily, they release nutrients easily. If they become very rigid, they're not as responsive to nutrients that try and get in there or to release. So that is one reason why you hear a lot of talk about omega-3s and whatnot, because again, just the type of fat we eat has a big impact on the quality of our cells. So, and if someone who, like when I measure someone's body fat, I've done this a lot. When I measure someone's body fat with calipers, I can tell if they've eaten a lot of fried foods in their life, because even their skin's not very pliable. The fat is harder than somebody who is probably generally eating sort of healthy. And every time that's happened, when I'm measuring somebody, if I start to if they're like real sensitive or it's just real hard, and I'll ask them if they eat a lot of fried foods or if they have, and every time I've done that, the answer's been yes. So that's probably not the best test for what I'm talking about. It's just an observation. But the point is, if someone's trying to eat a lot of fat so that they don't have to eat an adequate amount of carbohydrates, it's easy to do that with saturated fat. One, bacon's delicious, so that just makes it easy. The other thing is it just kind of like with, from a convenience standpoint, it's easy to kind of use saturated fat for that. Now, humans need saturated fat, but the thing is, if we're eating a good, healthy diet, we don't need to eat saturated fat to get it, because our body is capable of making saturated fat. So, saturated fat is not essential. Now, essential means, when someone says that a nutrient is essential or it's non-essential, that doesn't mean that humans don't need it. It means that if it is essential, that means we have to eat it to get it. Okay, so when people talk about essential fatty acids, it means that your body will not make those on its own. You have to eat them to get them. So we talk about omega-3s, omega-6s, those are essential fatty acids. We get those in our tissue by eating them. So that if we get enough quality fats in our diet, our body can convert some of that into saturated fat. So a lot of the people that I read talk about how humans don't really need to eat saturated fat. That does not mean I'm giving up my bacon. I'm not. I just don't eat it as much as I used to. And I used to eat it, me and the bacon, yeah. But I've cut back a lot on it. And I think it's helped. So, okay. Again, this might leave you with more questions than answers, but I'm okay with that, because you should be trying to learn. I'm not going to spoon feed you. So just capping it off real quick, humans don't store protein. So you should be kind of figuring out like how much you need for your goals and being consistent with that. Carbs are the body's preferred source of energy. Part of what that means is we use them more efficiently than protein and fat. You just want to make sure you're not eating so many carbs. Well, there's two things. One is, don't eat so many carbs that you become the Stay Puft Marshmallow person. The other thing is, in general, carbs that have a lower glycemic index are going to be better for you than carbs that have a high glycemic index. Basically, try and get most of your carbs from whole foods. So, vegetables, some fruit, and I like things like, I really like wild rice. I've had good success with that, and that's, pretty simple. So, and then dietary fat. I didn't even talk about this, but if you don't get in enough dietary fat, your body will not make the hormones that it needs for you to thrive. Again, we should be looking at what's optimal, not just what's baseline. So, as an example, as a male, if you don't get in enough dietary fat, your body won't make testosterone properly. And again, going back to like good hormones and bad hormones, I know a lot of people think that cholesterol is bad. Cholesterol is a pre-hormone. It's essential for life. You need cholesterol. And some people don't know this, but if you look up Dr. Mark Houston talks about how there are at least 7 different kinds of LDL. So when you're looking at cholesterol, you don't want to look at just like what your total cholesterol is, because that's not useful information. And then even looking at like your HDL versus your LDL, that can be kind of sketchy too. And again, I'm not giving medical advice. Anything that I say that's kind of health related should be taken in a sense of helping you have better conversations with your medical professionals, or giving you an idea of like what kind of things you should be looking at, not as like, go do this. So the lesson is, cholesterol is a pre-hormone. You need it to make other things in your body. I think that cholesterol is something that is widely misunderstood. So anyway, dietary fat is very important. It affects the quality of your cells. It affects your hormones on a base level. You need it. You just want to make sure you're getting in good quality fats. So what are good quality fats, you ask? I'll make a video about that. But basically, don't cook with extra virgin olive oil. It has a low smoke point. It means it burns. When you burn it, you're creating trans fats. So regular olive oil, coconut oil, grapeseed oil, look it up. There's a lot of good oils out there. You just want to make sure the fat you use meets the smoke point of what you're cooking at. I use organic butter sometimes. I just don't burn it. And then fish oil, I think, is something everybody should take. So this was not a quick tip. It went longer than I wanted it to, but that's what I get. So have a good day. Be productive. Be safe. Thanks.